So when you first load into the editor, the first thing that you're gonna see is your creature sitting here like this, and you've got these three big buttons at the top. T-pose just makes them T-pose, which is very useful because these action poses have a lot of overlap. Like here you can see these two intersect. If we try to actually go in here, you can see trying to click on certain stuff just kind of gets overlapped with. So T-posing helps keep the model kind of under your control. Camera lock just prevents you from moving the camera, and reset resets the customization to the base. It also, as you see here, it makes both gender differences pop up at the same time, which I believe is a bug, but hover over the gender or click back, and that will fix that. Then we have our three big buttons at the bottom: the bucket, the eyedropper, and the eye with the little slash through it. The bucket fills the highlighted section. The eyedrop grabs you the color. Like, I could go like that. And the eye with the slash is the probably most important tool for a lot of skins. This will remove parts of the model to make other parts easier to reach. So these stars on the tail, by using this now I can reach all of them very quickly, very easily. And then this has its own reset button. If you click this top one, it also resets it, but you might notice you can't click on anything here. This can be very, very useful if you're like, oh, I want to preview like what blue stars are gonna look like, but you don't want to fully undo everything, because technically these model parts, even though they show up, they're technically not there, which might be another bug, but it's kind of a useful one. And then you just click the reset button to bring all the interactivity back. Then on this side we have all of these names here, and all of these names are what you're gonna be using to fill large areas. They all have the little eye, so if you click the eye, that area disappears. And that can also be used with the bucket tool to fill in certain parts. So like you can see, I can reach these very easily now. These are good for if you're filling in long sections, like, oh, I just want all of that blue, and you don't really care about these little, or you can make the whole section blue. One thing to note with this section is if I were to leave it just like this and go into the game, even though I hit the reset button, these are still considered the selected colors for the creature model. So if I were to go into game, which I'm not going to, this section would still be blue. So to get rid of that, you can either bucket over it, because that will be considered, your higher priority because you manually clicked it, or you can exit out using the red button and go back in, and that will, you can see it pop back up in the blue because that was still there, and then you can hit reset and it's no longer going to appear as blue. And then the advance button, this is it's a lot. And the reason why it's a lot is because, oh my god, you open everything up and it's just selectors. But these selectors are actually very easy to navigate if you're, used to working with them. Using advanced should only really be your last kind of option, because I feel like using the bucket is just so much more intuitive. Like, oh, I want to reach this section. Okay, I remove this part and then I bucket it, But maybe you will find that those sections that's easier to use. And then we have our palette selection, this little rainbow button. And we have our material selection. So if I want to use something like the wood material, you can see a lot of the colors got changed, or the tones of the colors got changed, and the creature is just one solid material. So every part of Verza here has wood. So what we are going to do is select our palette that we're going to use, and I actually have a reference image what I am going to use, and I'll edit it over here, but I think we're going to have to use Nebula for this one. And two things when you are making skins like this. You have an idea in mind, you can kind of just, like if you're basing it off of a character, you can kind of just make the character. But if you're going for something more like aesthetic, like I am, you're going to want to use more gradients. So, like I could make all of this one color, right? And that looks totally fine. But because I personally think stuff looks better when you add in gradients and variation, I like to make sure that I always incorporate large but decent gradients into my skins that I make. Certain model parts are also going to have a top and a bottom. I deleted that ribbon right there, but if we look from the bottom, you can see it's still here. It's because it has two separate colors. You can see there's a little bit of a gap there where the black would be. And to remove this ribbon entirely, we have to view it from the bottom. Certain parts of models are connected in really annoying ways, and this is part of why I use Verza for this. You can see this section of the glow right here is connected to this part of the underbelly. So if I wanted to make that white, I have to deal with this section being white. And you could just deal with it, but what I like to do is I like to incorporate that into the actual design. So like, if I want that color like that, well, now I can make kind of a gradient leading into the tail that is the same color. And this goes back to like cohesion. Hair's the same color, this is the same color, so this part is the same color. And you can do that for the top as well, just to make it kind of flow a little bit better.